The second theory is social learning theory. Social learning theory really should be something that you can do on your own now, and if you're looking to test yourself, try and recall as many of the behaviourism key terms as you can. Really, you should be able to work out that behaviour is all learnt. It will typically come from either classical or operant conditioning. That we know that that's to do with association and rewards, that it's come from the environment, and that reinforcement is a key part of this. Direct reinforcement is important, positive and negative reinforcement, and it has problems with environmental determinism, nurture, reductionism, and scientific. Social learning theory argues that we learn aggression in two ways. Firstly, through direct reinforcement, so reward and punishment, and indirectly through seeing and observing others. Obviously, for social learning theory, they focus more on the second one. Bandura and Walters thought aggression could not be explained through traditional learning theory, where the traditional learning theory suggested that you had to have had direct experience of something in order to be punished or rewarded for it, or pair it with an existing stimulus. So it couldn't really explain how we acquire new behaviours, and Bandura suggested that aggression was often something new that somebody had not necessarily seen or directly experienced. So instead they suggested that social learning theory, and that it emphasises the idea of learning from observation. Bandura and Walters suggested that we learn very specific things about aggression from social learning, that we look at the form that it takes, so we learn that it can be verbal, that it can be physical, that it can be mental. We also learn how often it's acceptable for these things to occur, so we pick up from our environment whether this is something that can happen a lot or whether it has to happen only in extreme circumstances. And we learn what situations produce it and what situations it seems to be acceptable in. The theory doesn't ignore biological factors. Rather, a person's biological makeup creates potential for aggression, and the actual expression of that aggression is learnt. So be very careful about saying things like ignoring biology, ignoring the role of nature. Actually, it just says that how we express our aggression is learnt. First of all, I'd expect you to be talking about observation, that children learn their aggressive responses through observation of a role model and then imitating this behaviour. Remember that when we mean role model, we just mean somebody that they see acting in a certain way. It doesn't mean that they aspire to them or look up to them. It's enough to learn just through observation of role models to whom they identify. Bandura argued that children can also observe and learn about the consequences of those behaviours, so we may well see a model acting aggressively and we have learnt how to act in that manner. But Bandura says we're also watching to see what consequences are of those behaviours, so from watching others being rewarded or punished. Suggested we learn whether it's worth repeating those behaviours. So we may have learnt how to punch somebody. Is it worth it? Are we going to get told off? Are we going to get punished? Are we going to get rewarded? So just examples that we can see. Role models don't have to necessarily be a good thing. It's often suggested that the word confuses students, that we're talking about role model being a positive behaviour, but as you can see from these pictures, you've got a child acting in pretty much identical way to the adult in football hooliganism, so you'll see them swearing because they've seen that that is appropriate way to behave, possibly only in those circumstances, and things like picking up smoking. Or it can be a positive thing like the suffragettes inspiring the later feminism movements. The Bobo doll study again can be part of AO1. Like we did in the media, you can talk about the Bobo doll study if you have time and space. It involved children observing aggressive and non-aggressive models and then being tested for imitation in the absence of the model. There was male and female children aged between 3 and 5 years old. Half of them were exposed to adult models interacting aggressively with this Bobo doll, other half not aggressive. The model displayed aggressive acts, punching, kicking, saying pow to the Bobo doll. Following exposure, children were shown toys that they were not allowed to play with. The idea was to frustrate them, then taken to another room with toys that included the Bobo doll. Children in the aggressive condition reproduced the aggressive behaviours seen, and those in the non-aggression group from non-aggressive groups. They did find that boys were more physically aggressive than girls, but they found no gender differences in the amount of verbal aggression. There is some methodological evaluation. It's possible that the children in Bandura's studies were aware of what was expected of them, and this could have affected the validity of the findings. For most of you, that is all that is familiar with social learning theory. There is additional that you can put in. Bandura also talked about mental representation. So Bandura claimed that in order for social learning theory to take place, the child has got to form a mental representation of the events that they've seen. This means they've got to represent possible rewards and punishments for the actions. So they need to be able to think into the future. When opportunities arise in the future, the child will display these learnt behaviours as long as they're expecting a reward greater than the punishment that they're expecting. The actual behaviour itself, though, is maintained through direct experience. So once the child has seen a model acting in an aggressive manner, they might repeat that behaviour themselves. But social learning theory suggests that direct reinforcement comes into play after this. If the child's rewarded for that behaviour, then they're likely to keep it up. Whereas even if they've seen a model being rewarded, if they then get repeatedly punished, the behaviour should stop. So the example is a child who has a successful history of bullying, where they have bullied, they haven't been caught for it, they got away with it, they got something from it, they'll come to attach value to aggression. But there is something called self-efficacy, and that's that children develop confidence in their ability to carry out these aggressive actions. Children who were not good at aggression in the past are less likely to do it because they have less confidence in it. So again, it might be that a child has witnessed how to be aggressive. They've tried to have a go at it themselves, but for whatever reason, they weren't very successful at it. And that means that they don't consider themselves to be efficient. They don't have self-efficacy, and so they don't do it again. Okay, that's all your AO1 for this video. Take from those and make your 2 AO1 video.